Now, this is the Ark of Anubis. And doesn't it look familiar? Yes, it does, doesn't it? It looks very much similar to the Ark of the Covenant that is described in Deuteronomy, that is described in Exodus, in its construction as a seat of God for the Israelite people who were supposedly leaving Egypt in and around the late Bronze Age period, which would have been around 1300 to 1200 BCE, according to the biblical timeline. But of course, we know the story is fabricated. And part of that knowledge of fabrication is the fact that these types of arks were very common in Egypt and other places in the Levant. Queen Ty, who I believe existed in and around the early 1300s, late 1400s, she had her own ark. King Joser, who existed before her, had his own ark. But many of your nobility in Egypt and many of your religious sects in Egypt, Kemet, had arks for their gods. And when you look at the one of Anubis, made with the gold, with the poles, with Anubis, the god that led people through the underworld in order for them to go to the Sea of Reeds, he sat on his throne. It is just the fact that the Israelite people, when they began to write these stories down after the Bronze Age collapse, they decided, which we're looking at around 900 to 700 BCE, and on down through the Babylonian captivity and after is when most of your books were written of the Old Testament, that this common knowledge and common theme was something that was held by the people in the Levant, and especially when you consider that the land that you call Israel today, at the time frame of the Bronze Age, in the later Bronze Age, was controlled by Egypt. So yes, that means that Moses would have left Egypt to go into more Egypt because the area was a colony of Egypt at the time, a vassal of Egypt at that time frame. So he would have left Egypt for more Egypt. Now, upon understanding that, and the fact that Moses supposedly grew up in Egypt, it would make sense that they would have an ark similar to what was already known in Egypt. That further demonstrates how much these stories are copied and borrowed from civilization to civilization. And it's not an uncommon thing. It's not. There are places in the world that are westernized countries in the world. And if you go to some of these countries, you will find similar construction styles, similar furniture. Just because we have sofas in America, they got sofas in Rwanda. We got coffee tables in America. They got coffee tables in Indonesia. The designs may be different, more towards the culture of those people, but they're still going to have the same basic premise, the same basic idea. You can go to different churches around the world, and they're going to have the same basic idea. Whether it's a church, a synagogue, or a temple, they will have similarities to them. So therefore, it is not a reach to say that the story based around centering around the Ark of the Covenant was based on previous and current knowledge of having covenant arks for your gods and for your nobility. Further leads me to understand how the Bible is a copy and not an original. Y'all have a great day, and remember always you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.